Hello, that white smoke you see billowing out of the chimney of the SEANC headquarters means it's time for the Scenic View podcast.
Oh, I think that's sacrilege.
I'm Catholic. It's okay. I'll allow it.
It's the new pope.
Habemos podcast. I'm your host, Jonathan Owens, the communications director here at SEANC, joined by executive director Artis Watkins, government relations director Suzanne Beasley, and podcast producer Sam Klein. So I looked at Suzanne when I said artist that time, and so I kind of got a little mixed up with it. Anyway.
You know what?
I'll take it.
At the end of crossover week, we answer to anything.
Yeah.
You said the right names and titles. That's the important
Yeah,
part.
we got it all. You can splice it all together.
No one cares.
They don't. It's us. It's
just our deep thoughts they're interested in, not our names.
Well, welcome everyone. Today is Thursday, May 8th. It's a nice sunny day out, and we're in the North Carolina early summer period, I think. There'll probably be another cold spell before we get into terrible, or maybe not a cold spell, but a little bit of a cold, and then we'll get down into the terrible heat for 3 straight months, right?
It was in the lower 60s today, this morning, so I was happy waking up.
Seems like there's always like a 40s 2 days there somewhere. 2 days of like 40s and 50s.
Well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen soon, and then we're going to be over, and everybody's going to...
And then it'll be sweltering heat for
Yes.
3 months.
I feel like you got enough of those switch-ups in February and March when it was
No, we did.
snowing
Yeah, we
one or
did.
2 times.
Yeah. That was
Have you noticed, though, how
70%.
many times people are referencing dreading the heat coming up?
Yeah.
like they
it's a
haven't been
lot.
here for 30
No,
years.
I mean, but it's like we're stealing ourselves for
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
everybody's mentioning that. Like,
think
it's
it's
coming.
just-
It's coming.
It's just the world, and the heat's just compounding the rest of what's happening around us. So I think we
Maybe.
just are a little more sensitive.
Well,
The sticky heat that sucks.
yeah, it does. Yeah. Well, speaking of which, it was the crossover week at the legislature. Bills had to pass one chamber of the General Assembly by Wednesday in order to survive for the next 2 years, right? Of course, there are exceptions to that rule, which we may get into a little bit, but usually it makes for some long hours for Suzanne's crew down at the legislature. Our primary focus this week was on House Bill 549, which would strip State Human Resources Act protections from employees at the state auditor's office. SEANC members showed up on Tuesday and talked to legislators. We had a good turnout there.
We did.
And you guys all of y'all were down there too.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk about that a little bit in a minute. Unfortunately, House Bill 549 did survive. And so the House passed it on Tuesday. But some of the legislators may have expressed some heartburn over it, from what I understand. Is that correct?
There were lots of conversations with people who weren't 100% happy with it at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what it turns into, and we'll get into that in a second. But first, I wanted to do something a little different this week. Sam, you've been with us for a few years now,
Yep.
but I feel like you're really starting to get your feet wet over at the General Assembly this year. You've been over there several times,
Yeah.
perhaps more than in other years. Is this your first long session? I guess it...
No, the first year I got here was my first long session.
Okay.
It's kind of hard to tell the difference between long sessions and short sessions these days.
Yeah. So, but you were there Tuesday. You went to several meetings other times, and we kind of want to get the Gen Z perspective on the day, on the process in general, and on the bill. So, what are your initial thoughts on what happened Tuesday?
First, I think it was a great turnout as a lobby day, having all of our members come out there. There were so many members who were so passionate about being there and fighting for not just kill Bill 549, I guess is the way to say it, but also for getting better pay raises and getting COLAs. And I believe you guys called it a click in the system for
Like in
the
formula.
retirees.
Right.
And it was really cool to see how passionate everyone was and having everyone walk around and talk to the different legislators. It was a lot of movement that day.
Yeah.
A lot of movement. I'm still somewhat confused by why Bill 549 is completely necessary. Still somewhat confused by what the state auditor does.
Yeah.
But it was disappointing listening to how much debate there was going on and still hearing that the bill had passed.
You're probably like me when you first came here. I didn't really have a basis for state employment, and I didn't know what the I guess it was SPA at that time, State Personnel Act, why that's important and a thing. But I'm sure you've grown to appreciate it a little more being down with the folks.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely grown to understand a lot more and appreciate how hard you guys all work at the General Assembly for the state employees every single day.
Well, you're a pretty non-political person by nature. Like,
I'm very independent when it comes to political. I don't swing necessarily either way. I kind of have different social views versus financial views when it comes to politics.
So tell me, as a person who's just kind of, look, I'm taking every issue as I see it.
Yeah.
How did that whole process strike you in the last couple weeks? I'm just very curious.
It was irritating because the more you think about it, it's making it to where those employees wouldn't feel safe with their positions because they don't have the State Human Resources Act. It's making it to where the auditor now has the choice to say, oh, well, I don't think you're doing your job well enough, so I'm going to take you out and replace you with my buddy from New York who works in investing, and I think he's better.
Yeah.
And it's almost demoralizing for the state employees, and it really does make them feel like, I'm trying to remember the word that Kathy Merritt used on
Devalued.
Devalued.
Yeah.
And it makes them feel like they aren't worth the investment.
Yeah.
Well, what about the process? Because I saw your face in committee last week when they said, we'll hear from the public after we have already voted.
Yeah.
And I saw Sam's face was just incredulous. And I was curious then, but we didn't have time to talk about it since then. And then I saw your face the other day when they're like, we know this bill's got issues, but let's just move it and we'll try to fix them on the other side. So process-wise, what are your thoughts at this? You seemed shocked.
It just kind of feels ridiculous. Like, why? That's the easiest word to use for it. Why are we saying, okay, we're going to vote, but we'll still listen to what you have to say, but we don't care enough to listen before we vote?
Yeah.
Because we just got to rush through this and get it done.
Yeah. Yeah, like, can you imagine being able to do that at work? Yeah. Here it is. It's not done. Probably a big mess. We'll fix it later.
I've probably done that to you a few times.
Well, no, because honestly, imagine doing that at work. Somebody would be like, yeah, no.
It feels like
I know we have a deadline.
It feels like writing a paper for a final assignment in college and then saying, yeah, it's still messed up, but I'll submit you another paper later and you can grade that one instead. Yeah. And it's like, no, they're going to grade the first one. And that's the first.
I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Yeah.
Right, that's what it felt like to me.
But doesn't it also kind of feel like your input doesn't matter, or people on that committee's questions don't matter if they're going to get a totally new version of this bill? You know, they're going to do what they want to, right? I mean, it just seems...
That's what it felt like. It felt like, we'll listen, but we're not necessarily interested in what you have to say. And we're going to do what we think is best, even if it's not in the best interest of state employees and taxpayers.
And that's why I wanted your perspective, because honestly, her shock and incredulousness kind of hit me in contrast to us being like, yep, that's the way it goes. That's the way it happens in this system. And that is not where Gen Z probably is for the... I mean, I think when Gen Z learns things like that about how government's working right now, things that our Gen X world, we've just said, that's how it is.
Well, we're so jaded at this.
We're jaded.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure they're going to tolerate this. I'm really not. I think it's interesting.
I would also like to include, a lot of my generation doesn't understand how easy it is to go down there and advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Talking to my friends, and they're like, you can just walk in. You don't need an appointment. Like, you go through the visitor side, you can walk around the building and try and talk to legislators if they're not in meetings. And there's no one there to say, like, you absolutely cannot be here, you need an appointment, unless there is a reason that that legislator may need you to have an appointment, being like, hey, I don't have time today. Can we set up an appointment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the people's house, man. You can come down there and visit anytime you want to.
Yeah, they have a gallery up.
Well, it's interesting because the concept of the bill, just giving unfettered political power over everyone, even people whose employment clearly shouldn't be political, it is an old concept. We've been through this with Democratic leadership when the UNC system wanted everybody that worked in the UNC system to be exempt from these things. And now we're dealing with it with Republicans. I don't care who's in charge. At some point, they want the folks they're close to that are in charge to have this power. And it's the same thing, but it is hypocritical at the end of the day. There's no other way. There's no sugarcoating it. It's hypocritical because if you suggested someone from the other party have that kind of unfettered power, they would say that's just ridiculous. And it's swampy. That's why I keep saying to people, if you hate the swamp, how in the world could you like this bill? Because it's nothing but root stumps and cottonmouths and gators.
Good for me, but not for thee.
Completely opposite what they state that they're trying to do. You know, they want people hired on merit. And they want the best people hired.
Yeah.
But we're going to turn it into a political appointee agency. So
I can fire you no matter what your qualifications are. And no matter what kind of job you're doing, I could put my nephew in there who may not know how to tie his shoe.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? And here's the thing that gets me too. So this is not personal to Auditor Bullock. He may come in and...
No, it doesn't have anything to do with him.
You know, do fine. Whatever his vision is for that agency, we don't know what that is. But the next auditor may not. He's not going to be auditor forever.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, did you ever think you'd be talking about the state auditor so much?
No. Like I said before, I didn't even know what the state auditor does.
No one knows.
I know that we have people who work in the auditor's office who is their job to audit taxpayers if there's discrepancies when they're filing their taxes.
Everybody thinks that.
That's the most
I don't
common.
even know it.
No, they're supposed to look at government.
Yeah.
You know, make sure that every agency, big contracts like the state health plan, the auditor will do a really broad cursory look at that. But agencies are the main thing, or local governments, towns, and they will look at it. They have two ways of doing that, I think. One is the hotline they have where somebody calls and says, hey, there's some outright fraud going on in state agency X or in town Y or Z. And then they have to look into that and do an audit and make sure everything's square. Or I think it might be like Department of Labor where you can come up on a random list, you know, just it's time to take a look at you. But definitely there is a hotline that people can use.
What did their audits even entail, though? Because the only time I've ever heard of the term audit is whenever you're talking about you filed your taxes, you're going to get audited, possibly.
Oh, yeah. Well, totally different. I mean, the IRS audits simply go over what you have stated on your tax returns versus any records you have, your bank accounts, your expenditures, anything. If you wanted to count some kind of deduction, this is not really going to be a problem, Sam, because you're young and you're not, you know, working on Wall Street. So you've probably got pretty simple taxes. But that's what that's about. But with an auditor for governments, they're going to look at whether or not the public is being served in the way the agency or local government is set up to do, whether there has been proper controls on the finances of the governmental entity, whether there has been any kind of malfeasance. You know, you got to see if the books balance out, if there are financial controls put in place to make sure nobody can misuse any of these funds that are taxpayer funds at the end of the day, and that everything in government is operating the way it's supposed to and the way it reflects itself to operate to the people. That's what the auditor's office is there for. But now the auditor's office also has the Board of Elections.
Yeah.
And soon to have this DAVE Act, where they will look at every state agency, every vacant position to determine, does the agency need to exist? Does the position need to exist? It's an enormous amount of additional responsibility that would be put on the Office of State Auditor.
And I can almost see that, like from what you just said, that the DAVE may be part of that. I really can't see the argument for the Board of Elections, though.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't see either one of those things, to be fair, because the DAVE Act, if you have somebody who's working with agencies and looking at positions and the very agency itself to determine, is this needed by the taxpayers? What if they come across something that shows you really do need the agency?
Yeah.
But they're afraid. They see the final report come out and they think, ooh, that doesn't look like the pieces of information I saw. But if I speak up, you know, I'm probably going to lose my job. And then they'll think, well, I'm not 100% certain. I mean, I know the stuff I saw did not look the way the final report is, but maybe I'm just
not going to say anything.
Yeah, it's not worth it. No one's going to believe me is the other thing. If you're a low-level employee, you're going to think, no one's going to believe me.
Yeah.
If I don't have protections and I can't go forward and have the ability to go through grievance rights and things like that, no one's going to believe me. I don't have the power here. And that's kind of the whole point. So it's wrong to do to the employees, but it's wrong, like Sam was just saying, also to the taxpayers. It's a disservice, and it's very swampy.
Anything else?
Well, I do want to say that our people that came down
Yeah.
Oh, they
this
were
week
so
were
awesome.
just, look, when groups come down for a lobby day down there, they generally have had good notice of that. People can make plans far in advance, and then they get things paid for them to come there. Probably a big meal out on the Halifax Mall and stuff like that's taken care of. None of that was the case here. People wanted to come down and express their frustration and their concerns about the budget at the same time. They did it very last minute, and they did it on their own dime.
Mm-hmm.
And couldn't even get a bottle of water, because for those of y'all who haven't been around the legislative building, this shocked a lot of people. After 2:00, I guess it is, when the cafeteria closes, there's nothing you can get inside that building to go get even a bottle of water or a snack.
You can in the Sunny Dine thing.
So there's a snack bar that's one of those do-it-yourself pay things,
Right.
and it's out of the way, and no one would know about it.
Yeah.
The sign outside the door says Sine Die, which is
Sunny Dine.
Oh, yeah, trying to be cute.
So-
Sine die is the term at the end of session to signify it's the end of session. Sine dine is just those really clever lobbyist things. So no one would know that's there.
That's true. So
I
yeah,
know.
that is an issue. In our past lobby days, we've always had a cooler of water, and
Oh, yeah. We've
we
taken
take care of our folks. So the fact that they came
And it
without any
was
special treatment,
a long day.
it was a long day.
long day.
Correct.
They didn't even go into session. It was a 3:30 scheduled session, but I think it was probably 5.
It was.
It was.
Session never starts on time.
Yeah.
Session never starts on
So
time.
I couldn't believe it. They hung with us. They were still there. Anyway, I'm very impressed. They came on their own dime. This was not like other groups' lobby days. And it was just a very natural thing that happened. And it also told me just how ticked off people are that many people on their own dime last minute did that.
I mean, we even had retirees show up to advocate on behalf of active employees who would be affected by House Bill 549. So
According to the legislators, we were loud.
Oh, yeah.
We were
Didn't you get in
heard.
trouble?
Look, there were some people referring to our group as protesters. Like this was a quiet group,
Yeah.
largely eating snacks.
Yeah, and
The snacks that
socializing outside of
that
the
somebody found the Sunny Dine. Maybe you took somebody to the Sunny Dine. So once they found that, before that, they were just chatting with each other.
Yeah.
And they had been talking to legislators during the day, but absolutely normal conversations. But yeah, there was a little bit of just kind of irritation. It felt
Could feel the vibe
that they
for
were there.
sure.
They felt it anyway. And I really could not tell otherwise, because it was coming off of people that day. I think crossover's a tense week anyway. But
I mean, heaven forbid the public come to be part
Yeah.
of the problem.
well, and that's the thing. You want the public to always feel like, look, you're wanted here, and what you have to say, even when you're upset, as long as you're not being unruly and if you're not doing something that's so chaotic it's interrupting the process, or come on and say your piece. And it's okay to come say it to people's faces.
Mm-hmm.
But there were people that felt like, yeah, they don't want to see me or hear from me.
Yeah, I saw the group that was there, and if someone's intimidated by that group,
Right.
they probably don't need to come to our
Those
convention.
very nice
Oh, yeah.
people.
Yeah, those were very
Yeah.
nice folks.
I think what's happening is legislators are getting less and less used to seeing the public and hearing from them. The more unusual it gets and uncommon, the more uncomfortable it gets.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some legislators, and this may also just be maybe being a legislator's changing, but it used to be they were really expecting and comfortable with people coming and doing that kind of thing. Now there's some that really almost seem absolutely offended.
Yeah.
Hey, they shouldn't be questioned.
And that's not great for the process.
That's part of the process when
Yeah.
you're making law.
Another thing, whenever I was talking to my friend about it, she said, "What days do they do this on?" And I'm like, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, during work hours, basically.
Huh.
And she was
We
like,
get
well,
past
how does
work hours
anyone in the public
A lot.
get to go to these things?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard for a regular person to go to these things because
Now
and
look,
to
and
advocate for.
let me tell you something that'll blow your mind, Sam. Way back in the day, in the early 2000s, what would happen, and that you couldn't get on the internet and listen to session.
Mhm.
So if you were on the Senate side, over on the House side, they might call a recess you didn't even know, and they would do what was called a meeting around the desk. And they would have a committee meeting around someone's desk on the floor of the legislature, pass some piece of legislation through committee, and no one even knew it. And then they'd come back in from recess, put it on the floor for a vote. And therefore, lobbyists would oftentimes completely miss it. that a piece of legislation had been.
I mean, sometimes it would happen so quickly that you couldn't get from the gallery where you were observing session downstairs to the floor before it was done.
So in fairness, this lack of openness that the General Assembly is getting criticized for a lot is in many ways a lot more open than it used to be. And in other ways, a lot more thin-skinned than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just the difficulty for a regular taxpayer who works a 9-to-5 job.
Well, that's always,
They can't just say, hey, guys, I'm going to go advocate for myself at the General Assembly today and take off of work.
Yeah. And state employees have traditionally been told to stay away by their agency head or whoever, stay away from the General Assembly because we don't want someone to perceive you're speaking for the agency or the university or whatever. That's not been uncommon either.
That's not how it should be. They should be able to say, hey, I work for this agency. I think this would affect us, and I'm concerned without
you can do
any
that.
repercussions.
You can do that in other ways.
Yeah.
Like emails, calls.
Yeah. But it's a long-standing tradition of really not being tremendously welcoming to the public. That part has been clear.
So where do we go from here on 549? It obviously goes over to the Senate.
Yeah.
Any idea on what they're thinking?
No, I don't know who's carrying it yet on the Senate side. Lots of legislators told us on the House side, when it gets over to the Senate, we're going to continue working on it. We're going to get it fixed. Well, we'll see.
Most of the Senate was claiming to be unfamiliar with it.
They were. So that kind of threw us. We went and talked to some senators while we're in the middle of all of crossover hullabaloo. And we heard, we don't know what you're talking about.
So if it passes the Senate in its current form, it would go to the governor, who would likely veto it.
I mean, we believe he would, but we don't know. Yeah, I will say we have to shout out to Representative Longest.
Man.
Oh, yeah.
Who ran an amendment and did a great job with it of saying, hey, there's a lot of things going on in this bill, but the one that's problematic is where you take all of these state employees and make them all political appointees. That's wrong. It doesn't serve anybody. Let's take it out. He did a great job with that amendment. We really appreciate him. And honestly, the vote on that amendment, I think, showed the weakness of this bill. It was going to pass. I mean, remember, the House is one vote shy of a supermajority in terms of the way the House is constructed, laid out right now. But this vote was pretty weak, and there were 4 Democrats missing that day. So if those 4 Democrats had been there, and let's assume they voted with Longest, who's also in their caucus, goodness, it would have been a pretty close vote.
Yeah, and you've talked about that this passes, it'll just start happening in other agencies.
It would.
I mean, like Department of Labor has a Republican in charge. Could you see it expand to that?
I mean, I would think you would literally see all the agencies. You'd see the university system right back, because we've done this several times with the university system so far. And by the way, people are told things will be better for you if you're not limited to the raise state employees get. And the only thing we have to go by is something that was done in the late 90s when some folks at UNC Healthcare, which was called something different at the time, and ECU Family Medical Practice, which is not called that now. Some folks there were taken out and told, this way we can do better by you. And they would call our office all through the 2000s saying, this is frustrating. We were told it would be better, and we're not getting as much as the state employees even every time. So our only experience with it is all these really disgruntled people who were told, if you don't fight this, it'll be so much better for you, and who've done worse.
Yeah. Any other bills of note this week in the crossover?
That was our big bill. A lot of bills did pass. They finished up last night, so we didn't have to go back to the building today. And I know legislators were extremely happy to get out of that building last night.
So we talked a little bit on text about crossover week itself and what it really means. And you had a kind of a pithy synopsis of what it really means. You pretty much said it doesn't really mean anything, right?
So here's the thing. So crossover does mean, that the bills have to pass one of the other chambers to stay alive. That doesn't necessarily mean that some language in a bill that didn't make crossover won't get added to another bill, or a bill stripped of its, language.
And the bills subject to crossover are the ones that don't have money attached.
But at the end of the day,
so all you got to do is attach $1.
And you can make the argument that a lot of bills can be
Mhm.
budget bills.
Anything.
Right?
We've watched it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
So even if your favorite bill didn't pass the crossover, it feels like it's almost like a way to tell the other side that your bills don't matter anymore.
Before we leave the 549, the auditor's bills, congratulations to Sam Hayes, who was general counsel for Speaker Hall, who has been recommended by the auditor to be the elections board chair, the executive, is it executive director? Yeah, of the elections board. So that was just the very next day after 549.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
There were bills that did make me kind of squint my eyes and go, huh?
Yeah,
They
like
weren't necessarily revolved around state employees, but one of them, for example, was them saying that doctors cannot treat minors. They can consult with minors, but they cannot treat a minor for STDs or drug and alcohol abuse or any of that stuff without their parents' consent. And that one kind of just made me squint my eyes and was like, some minors aren't comfortable sharing with their parents that something happened that caused them to get an STD and don't want to have to confront their parents. Or sometimes when it comes to drug and alcohol abuse, their parents have the same issues and they're not going to help them get help. And so that was kind of a bill that I started squinting my eyes at and was like,
sometimes they're getting the drugs and alcohol from their parents, whether their parents know it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm often struck by these bills that are for the children, and parents need to make the decisions. But
yeah, that was
all
an
parents
interesting
are
part
not
of the
great
debate. I
parents.
saw your face during that too, Sam. Sam was listening to every word. It was interesting.
I was also paying attention to the bill that registered nurses had to have 2 years of hospital.
Oh, your mom's a nurse.
Yeah.
Of course you were listening.
Yeah. My mom never wants to be a school nurse. I can promise you that. She does not. She didn't even want to do it when she volunteered for a short period of time for my school. She did it because I was getting sick a lot at the time. And she was like, I can give you Advil all I want. I'm your parent.
You need an Advil? Here you go.
Yeah. Because that was something I was sitting there thinking. And I was like, okay, I
This segment
understand.
sponsored by Advil and Peeps.
advanced medicine for pain.
Back to the Peeps.
But I was paying attention to that. And I was like, okay, I understand needing more training because you are working with small children in comparison to like an adult. Don't just go to a school immediately out of college. But they can't do much.
We didn't even have a nurse at my
Well,
we had a nurse like once or twice a week when I was in high school.
that was brought up on the floor as to how difficult it is to get nurses in the schools. And that's it's a whole thing.
Because I think that's also a pay discrepancy thing.
Mm-hmm.
The school systems are paid a lot less. And so they're like, why would I go work as a nurse in a school when I can go work at the hospital down the road and make a crap ton more?
Yeah, 100%.
crap ton has been added to our list.
I was trying to censor myself.
So we haven't done our weekly budget update. Any news on the budget?
So, there is a little news on the budget. Speaker Hall announced last night at the end of session that next week would be a light voting week because all the appropriations chairs would be working on their portions of the budget, and then it's coming the 19th or 20th.
Okay.
So, quickly.
I saw there was a something there's talk about possibly getting it to the governor by June.
Yeah.
That means it's all decided between the two chambers. Come on. That's all that means.
I just want to state for the record that you have Bojangles water.
I do. Yeah.
Does it have spices and things in it?
Yeah. One with it does a little bit taste like Bojack, oddly.
Does your Chick-fil-A drink taste like Chick-fil-A?
It's delicious.
This
So-
segment sponsored by Bojangles
Bojangles
and
water.
Peeps.
Got a lot of flavor, y'all.
Everything sponsored by Peeps today.
And Peeps. So anything else we need to talk about before we get to my favorite part of the day? No?
I don't think so. I think that's
Okay, cool.
it.
Well, let's get to the John's Wacky Weird Question of the Week.
John's wacky weird question of the week.
I think I need a new song. We're going to have to work on that one a little bit. I like it, but it's kind of wearing on me. So just to follow up to last week when I kind of geeked out about the weird TikTok story. There's been new information, and I'm like
Oh, my
98% certain that it was all fake.
No.
Well, they just keep like doing these TikToks
People
where,
didn't come back from the future after all.
where they're like, oh, we're going to show the picture this time on this and like the next thing will come up and they just never show the picture, which is like the key to the whole story.
You know, it's weird to me that it was the week after the annual commemoration of the resurrection that you had people coming back from the future.
Yeah.
In a
So
story.
I question the validity of that story, but I do think it was very creative. Possibly a movie will come out on this at some point.
It could happen.
So this week, I've regaled you folks with my pictures and videos of birds for my new bird feeder with camera. I've been very excited about this bird feeder with a camera in it. It's amazing.
John
I'm
is
very-
officially a bird watcher now.
Yeah, I'm kind of obsessed with it. And so it's also helped me and my mother-in-law bond because we both have one.
Oh, that's
And so she's a big birder too. And
Is that what we're called?
Yeah.
Bird
watchers
folks are now birders.
bird watcher. And so she and I have been sending videos back and forth. I have like the greatest mother-in-law in the world. She's like a
Aw.
saint. So Elvia from Wilson, North Carolina, retired school teacher.
Woo! All right, Elvia. Shout
Big
out.
shout out to Elvia.
Is she a member?
Yeah, I think so.
There we
You
go.
think so?
And Jimmy is as well. He also a school teacher. So,
Hey, Jimmy.
but yeah, back to the birds. My question this week is: what is your favorite bird, or do you have an experience with a bird that you would like to share?
Mine's
Anything. It can be like a not real bird. It can be like a fantasy bird.
I got a bird.
Mockingjay.
What's your
I
bird?
got a bird. I'm not going to show it to you.
Whoa.
Yeah, I was being snarky. I do have a bird story, but it's kind of dark.
Do it.
Crows.
Oh yeah.
Black crows. We had to cut the tree down, but we used to have a little red maple tree on the corner of our sidewalk, and a robin had built her nest in there, and she had, she'd laid her eggs, and the babies had hatched. I heard a fuss out my window, and I looked out. It was an out of the ordinary fuss, and the crow would fly into the nest, snatch one. He'd fly out into the yard, drop it on the ground, and then poke it in the head.
Oh.
And then fly off with it. And he got all of her babies.
Oh.
And yeah, that mama robin was fussing and, trying to scare them off. And I thought, well,
Crows are apparently like the smartest bird.
yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And
I
mean.
know it's just nature, but they do
It
seem kind of
is.
meanish
Yeah.
the way they go about things.
And I haven't ever forgotten it. I mean, it's
Yeah,
stuck
that's
with
disturbing.
me. So sorry if it sticks with you now.
Clara and I got into a discussion over whether crows and ravens are the same thing. And I don't know. I didn't even.
I don't know.
Neither.
I don't think they are.
Oh, really? So my story is similar to that one. My grandmother lived next to me, grandma. She had chickens in like a coop, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one day she called us like hysterical, just going crazy. She was like, "The devil is in my chicken coop. There's a devil in my," like I thought it was a real devil. Like she was like freaking out. And we were like, "Grandma, okay, so we went over to grandma's house, and there was an owl in there, and it had eaten the chickens.
Oh.
And it was like the biggest owl ever, and it had these talons that were like
Yeah.
sticking
Yeah,
on
they're
it.
imposing.
And it really was terrifying.
And I think
so-
the stare of an owl, they don't blink.
yeah.
So it's
And she really thought it was the devil in her chicken coop.
side note, ravens are larger than crows. They are not the same bird.
Oh, okay. See, Clara's argument was that ravens have that skin that's like oily looking.
Yeah, they do.
I don't know. Not skin, feathers, maybe.
Yeah.
All right. Bird stories. Any bird stories?
I don't have a bird story, but I do have a favorite bird, even though it's not real.
Me
It is
too.
fictional. It's the mockingjay.
Is that a real thing?
It's not real.
Oh, okay.
It's a mix of a mockingbird and a jabberjay from Hunger Games. A jabberjay was supposed to mimic what people say and bring it back to the Capitol for information. And they realized they weren't really working because they weren't picking up anything useful. So they just released them all into the wild in one of the districts. And they weren't supposed to survive. They were just all supposed to die off, but they found a way to survive by mating with the mockingbirds and creating the mockingjay. And now they hum little tunes.
Okay.
Well, there you go.
See, I always wondered
They're
if those were real
resilient.
things like mockingbird,
There's a
blue
mockingbird,
jay.
Yeah.
The blue jay is real. The mockingbird is real.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Just the
saying.
mockingjay is not real. I don't think.
No, I don't think
Artists
so
is
I
either.
was saying, I'm pretty sure the mockingjay is only in Hunger Games.
Well, I mean, I'm so literal that you lost me at is not real. But I am trying to develop more of an appreciation for fantasy because it's a way for the brain to relax and
Mm-hmm.
not just think. What'd you say last week about hobbies, John? That mine was like, oh, House Bill 549. Because it's true. I'm trying to be a little more interesting.
What is your birds? Do you have a bird story? I need to start prepping you for this. It's not fair.
Mine are pretty
It's
bad.
not fair. Like,
Well, so my bird story would be a missed bird opportunity.
oh, okay.
I've had lots of interactions with birds in the yard, things like that, and some good, some bad. But I would say puffin is my favorite bird.
Oh.
And I wanted to see one for real. So when my son had gone to Ireland and then met me in Scotland, and my thing was I really wanted to see a puffin. Saw everything on this little raft trip that you could see wildlife was around there, including a whale, which they didn't expect to see where we were, but not the puffins.
No puffins.
So I was obsessing a little bit on the way back about not seeing a puffin. So we made it all the way back from Isle of Skye to Edinburgh and turned the rental car in. We're in an Uber, and I'm still going on and on about, and I never saw a puffin. Finally, my son, who's the opposite of me, strong, silent type, quiet, looks at me and says, "That's it. The Edinburgh Zoo's right up here. I'm going to take you and show you a darn puffin so that this ends." But we didn't. We didn't go to the zoo. I was exhausted. But I really wish I had seen a puffin because I think they're so cool.
What does a puffin look like? Because
they're fantasy to me.
All I am picturing is, this is going to sound ridiculous, Bibble from the Barbie princess.
Okay, so they're ridiculous looking. They look like a cross between, like if you shrunk a penguin down and mixed it with a toucan. They're just the cutest little.
They are awesome.
And they hang out in huge groups on cliff sides.
Wow.
And then in the puffin world, where you are on that cliff is determined by it's a social structure.
OMG.
So the ones that are the most in charge are at the top because they poop on everybody else.
I just
they
want
look like they would be a descendant of the dodo bird.
I just want to throw this out there, artists. The North Carolina Zoo has a puffin.
Woo! All right, North Carolina Zoo.
So we're going to do an event at the zoo.
Let's do one.
With the puffin.
I'm ready for it.
They're just adorable.
2 years. I want to go again.
All right, let's go. Now we have a mission.
Field trip. Oh, that is a cool bird. One time there was an osprey at my house. Those are awesome.
Will be the
It's like a Seahawk.
Those are pretty, yeah. I've seen a bunch of ospreys.
Oh, that's the state raptor?
Or it's going to be.
I clearly don't know birds that well because I've
passed the house.
These are.
Osprey is a Seahawk. Like you see like the
UNCW Seahawk.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm excited about the puffin.
Yeah.
Apparently they're everywhere in Ireland, but
not where you were.
Not where I was.
So field trip to the zoo.
They're in Ashboro. That's where they are.
Yep.
Everything.
They're hiding there.
There's a little thing, though, to think about for birds. Birds singing.
Yeah.
That safety.
I love it.
They sing when it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have your coffee out on the porch or whatever and listen to the birds sing of a morning, your body will react to that. Your cortisol levels will decrease because nature and birds singing, means safety. And
that's probably like an evolutionary thing we've developed over time. When we hear birds singing, we calm down.
Maybe that explains some of the obsession with the bird feeders these days.
I feel like that's the same way with a lot of animals because our horses could tell there was a storm coming before you could smell it in the air.
Yeah.
We would walk outside and we'd start hearing them run around and we're like, what the hell are they doing? And then we'd smell like 5 minutes later and we're like, it's going to storm.
Mm-hmm. Feel that pressure drop.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, that was a good episode. We'll see what you can make of this, Sam. But
I got it.
Thanks, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you next week.